You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Empowering Process podcast. I have with me an amazing person. His name is Howard Brown. And what I'd like to share with you about Howard is he's going to talk to you about persevering and overcoming some of the biggest fears that we face in life. And because of his experiences, he has created a company, a business, and books, and we've got so much information to share with you at the end, all around shining brightly every day. Welcome, Howard. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Gail. Oh, great to be here. It's cold in some places, it's warm in others, but winter is here and amongst us. So I'm thrilled to be on your show.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for the shining bright visual because it's helping me stay warm. So one of the things that Howard and I are going to talk about is what it takes when you're faced with literally death. Literally, where most people would just throw in the towel, and not just once, but then again. So Howard had the pleasure of facing stage 4 cancer, not once in his life, but twice in his life. And he has fought that battle and is here to share, what that looks like and how his life changed because of it. Welcome so much, Howard.
Well, let's not scare all the audience and listeners and then watchers completely, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm here. I'm alive. So that's the we're going to go cut right to the lead here that I'm still here. But listen, Gail, we all get knocked down in life. Okay, if you think about if you've lived a good life, you've taken some chances out there, you've failed, you've got knocked on your tush a few times, and it can be from a lot of different things. It can be family, it can be relationships, it can be work, it can be health, and on the list goes. So we all get knocked down in life, and the key, get back up again,
Right.
and again, and again, and again. That's what you have to do. Not so easily done, but it can be done. And I am full, in-person testimony here that it can be done. And I did get knocked down very difficult times, twice in my life, once at age 23, once again at age 50. And you want me to share some details? Or
yes, let's talk about, the 23-year-old and then, years later, what happened.
Sure. So things are great. I'm graduating the #1 school for entrepreneurship, Babson College. I'm moving on to NCR Corporation, and I'm in their training program, and everything's great. So, I'm like a junior sales guy in the banking division, bank services division. I'm working hard for these 4 top-notch sales guys, making some money out of school. And I get promoted to sell this disaster recovery service project, and I get to move to Dayton, Ohio. I mean, I'm promoted at 23 years old. It was pretty cool. And so I hop in a cool red Grand Am. It's what I could afford. That was my first non-hand-me-down car. And I'm cruising down the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And I notice, something on my cheekbone. All right, well, when you pull over on the Pennsylvania Turnpike in 1989, you see payphones. So I called home to check in. It was a payphone. I called my mom and I said, I noticed something. It's probably nothing. And that's the first time I discovered this little nodule on my cheekbone. And I kept trucking on. The next morning, I made it into Dayton. The next week, I started to work. It was getting bigger. It was actually pink and then starting to turn purple. So I thought it was a pimple. I thought it was a cyst, but I was working out at the gym. I was playing basketball. It wasn't bothering me, except the fact that I wore glasses at that time. And my glasses weren't really fitting on so straight. And people would ask me about it, and I'm making excuses. I get hit in basketball. I got an elbow. Something happened at the gym. But I was pretty focused on getting my career going. So my mom flew out, and this is the time at the airport you could actually greet someone at the gate. And so I greeted at the gate, and she goes, "What's that?" I go, "I don't know. It's nothing. It doesn't bother me." And we really didn't have any doctors. I didn't know anybody. I was just started out in Dayton, Ohio. She was getting my apartment set up. Imagine that, clean sheets, dishes. That's what moms do. And I was working and then, come home at night and we'd either make dinner or go out and grab dinner or go shopping for stuff that we needed for the place. Well, as luck would have it, I was speaking at the American Bankers Association about disaster recovery and backup plans. You needed to be electronic at that time. It was a mandate. And that's in Boston. And my parents lived in Framingham, which is about 25 minutes from Boston. So I flew in the night before and the weekend before. And my dad and I usually go do something athletic. And he tricked me. He goes, I'm going to get that thing checked out because we weren't heading to the tennis courts. We went to the community hospital and went to the emergency room. They saw me quickly and they said, looks like a cyst. Take some antibiotic and, you're on your way. Well, we didn't go play tennis, but we went to breakfast. It was good. Come Monday, I was not feeling great. I went and did my speech. A friend from college came. He helped me hand out stuff at the back table, back in the room, hand out floppy disks, because that's how you shared a demo, right? I'm aging myself now. But I wasn't feeling good. Came home, and then late afternoon, my dad took me right back to the emergency room. This time, they took not one, but 2 biopsies. And when they cut me open, I could see it out of the corner of my eye. He's like, it's an emergency room doctor. He goes, I've never seen anything like that before. Yeah, good thing to tell me, right? But I was so focused on working, I didn't think of it. My parents were freaking out. They had no idea what it was. And things took longer. We're on landlines, right? No internet, no cell phones. So I kind of flew to Tampa. There's a story in my book about freaking out my friend Dave Herman, because I started to grow spots on my body. Now then I started to worry a little bit, but I never made it back to Dayton, Ohio. I got called back to Boston. And we went to this little community hospital, and it was like 7 doctors this time. I was like, well, I got an audience. They go, you're going to Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And I was like, why? Why am I going there? We drive in, 20 minutes in, and we go through a barrier of tests. And I'm still not really kind of processing, why am I here? I feel great. So instead of going hanging out with the old people, I go to the Jimmy Fund with the kids, and they're bald and they're playing, and I was just hanging out there, and there's candy everywhere. And finally they call my name and they start doing a ton of tests on me. And then I get called into this office, a big mahogany desk, this guy, Dr. George Canales, who invented chemotherapy for lymphomas. And behind him was this young doctor, a Harvard fellow named Eric Rubin. My parents were behind me. I'm in a suit and tie, like an Armani suit. My dad's kind of dressed up. It's like, we're going to a function afterwards. And I heard the words, Howard, you're a young man. You have stage 4 T-cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's a blood cancer of the lymphatic system. It's aggressive as hell. And we're going to try to pound it out with chemotherapy. And then afterwards, blah, 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 Charlie Brown, didn't hear a word. And I look back, my mom's bawling. My dad's a statue, handling it very differently. And I look up at Eric Rubin because he's close to my age, maybe 5, 6, 7 years older. I go, what is he talking about? Well, they proceeded to break it down for us, and I think I was numb. Deer in the headlights, yes. So they said, you're going to come back. We're going to do some more tests, and then like in 3 days, we're starting chemo. This is in October of '89, kind of early in the month, maybe 7th or something. And we go home that night, and we call my twin sister, 5 minutes older, and we bring in food for dinner, and we sat there and we just cried because we didn't know anything. So imagine this, my dad goes to the library and gets a book on cancer. We couldn't search Dr. Google. We couldn't do anything. We didn't know anything. And we had a landline at home, and we didn't tell anybody, but we didn't know what we didn't know, right? It was really something. So we're learning at the same time. And I go in for chemotherapy, and they do all these tests. They take blood, and Dr. Rubin comes out and he says, we're not doing chemo today. I was like, you just told me that, it's aggressive cancer. There's a chance of, I could die. What do you mean I'm not doing it? I couldn't sleep all night. And he said, your liver function's too high. It's not safe. We're going on a field trip. Now, I got to tell you, I've asked him a few times, what made him have this vision that I'm going on a field trip? He says, you're going to the cryopreservation center, cryogenic center. I go, cryo what? What are you talking about? He says, well, you're 23. He goes, go. I go, well, okay. So we drove down there and I left a sperm sample and I kind of forgot about it. But there's good news there. We'll talk about that in a second. So I was failing chemotherapies. So they tried a cocktail, didn't work. Tried another cocktail, didn't work. I relapsed when I was down visiting my grandparents down in Florida that get your butt right back home. The first piece of good news was that my twin sister had typed an exact, what's called HLA 100% match. Now that's a 1 in 24, 25,000. That was a lottery ticket. And she was a match. But now they had to kind of get me into some type of stable remission or some type of stability. And I was in and out of the hospital. I was cranking blood transfusions at that time. Whole cells, red cells, platelets. This is an immune deficiency problem here. So I'm living in a mask way before COVID. Got to wash my hands. My mom is just absolutely paranoid of friends coming over. Even though I wanted to play Nintendo or get my mind off things, I had my immune system was compromised. So roll the clock forward. I have this bone marrow transplant. The week before, they blast you with chemo. They blast you with full body radiation twice a day. That's hard enough. And the day, 6 in the morning on May 24th, my sister rolled her into Brigham and Women's Hospital and they extract her bone marrow. Okay. 5 in the afternoon, after they cleanse it, they inject it into me. It's purpley little substance. And they basically wait to see if it kills you right away. Because if you take a transplant from someone's body, it may reject. And I knew that. It could reject immediately or right over time. Otherwise, they just watch it. And they see if it actually goes into your system. Do you have any side effects like graft versus host disease, which can kill you, or turn you pink, like the Pink Panther, or make you itchy? And I had a little bit, which is actually good. And they watch and take blood, and they want to see your immune system grow. And you're in an isolated room where people have to gown up and sterilize and wash. And so it's like a prison cell. And I had a window, but I was very weak. And we just watched it grow and grow. And it did. It grew, and it actually grew because you're reduplicating cells. I got kind of smart. And it was working. So they took me out of the privacy room where there was, I was alone. I got to go onto the cancer floor and then eventually go home. I think in all it was about 40 days. And I'd lost a ton of weight. I'm 135 pounds involved. They put me on a clinical trial called interleukin-2 to strengthen my natural killer cells. So I want to stop there because it's a lot. But miracle number one, my twin sister saved my life.
Well, miracle number one, and fortuitous suggestion number two, because of that trip to the cryogenic clinic.
Yes.
Right. So this doctor knew that your situation was so devastating that if you survived, you would not survive completely whole.
Unfortunately, chemotherapy does make young people and old people sterile, the amount that I was getting. And I have a little surprise. I have the bag of life. All right, this is craziness. They finished it finished and it's just hanging on the pole. I tell my mom, I go grab that bag and put it in your purse. What am I thinking? Craziness. This, I hold this very dearly. This saved my life. Right. The contents of this bag, my bone marrow bag.
Right. So that's amazing. And it's true, even though your sister is a twin, it does not necessarily mean that she's going to be a match for you. I mean, she's got a better shot, but the odds are still not really great.
Yeah, there's people today, they're getting their cheeks swabbed and getting matches. The gift of life, be the match. It's still a 1 in 24, 25,000 chance of being a match. And it's even more incredible when it's a stranger match. It's just incredible, and it saves lives. So go get your cheek swab. Right. It's a beautiful thing.
Right.
When your number's called, say yes and say I'd be glad to give my bone marrow.
So here you are, probably no longer working in Ohio, right?
Nope.
Yeah. So now you're faced with, how do I get my life back together, and what happens?
Okay. So I wasn't such a deer in the headlights now because I had gone through about months of treatment, and then basically another December. So I was probably about 13 months into treatment now. And they watch you very carefully to see if your immune system's growing back. And they're taking blood tests, and they're taking gallium scans and nuclear medicine scans, and they're doing that every quarter. So I ran after December, when I got off the clinical trial for interleukin-2. I moved to Florida with my buddy Dave Herman, and a couple of my high school buddies came down to babysit with me, and I was building back. So I got crushed. My life came to a screeching halt at age 23 and a half, emotionally, physically. Well, I couldn't say financially, because I moved home with mom and dad, and NCR paid the medical bills, and I actually banked some money, but still, I didn't have to worry about that then. And then in relationships, I was really restricted on who I could see because of my immune compromise. But I was really then going back to build things up. So how did I build things up? Activity, playing golf, playing basketball, walking, getting my strength back, working out. That's a big key to it. Hydration. Okay. Positivity, finding my happy spot, which is always the basketball court. But I was doing that. But I had kind of babysitters. So my high school buddies were watching me like a hawk and reporting back to my mom on a landline. But I was getting stronger. And so my buddy Dave Herman and I worked together at NCR Corporation, and they had the annual trip to Acapulco. I missed that because I was sick. But then this year's trip was to Hawaii. So I kind of had, big guts. And I typed a letter on a typewriter, and I sent it out to NCR Corporation, to the CEO. And I said, I'd like to come to Hawaii. I missed the trip because I was sick. And they sent me a note back, letter, and they said, you can come if you get doctor's permission. So I got doctor's permission. I went to Hawaii. It was awesome. So they asked me to lunch. So I'm sitting with the president of NCR, the president of the CEO of NCR, Charles Exley at the time. And they're like, Howard, we're so glad you're here. When are you coming back to work? We legally have to offer you a job. When are you coming? And I said, well, I kind of want warm weather. Plus, I had moved back with mom and dad, and mom and dad were like the protective order. They were really locking down because they didn't want to get sick. And I was in the hospital a lot. I became what's called neutropenic, and you could get infection and fungus, and it was horrible. So they gave me an opportunity to interview in Atlanta or LA. And I interviewed in both places. And in May of 1991, I moved out to Los Angeles, to Marina Del Rey, and I started working again. And I put my career back in order. I was getting my mental toughness back in order, my confidence back in order. And this takes real work, because I was 135 pounds and bald. And my dad hooked me up with, he sells cowboy boots in New England, with some of his customers had their sons out there. So nice Jewish boy to meet nice Jewish boys out there, Jay Rosen and Craig Shiro. I became really best friends with them for life, and still am. And it was really nice to have some people that I knew, because I didn't know anybody, but I was meeting people at work, and I was playing basketball a lot after work, during the weekends, outdoors, on the beach. And that's my happy place. And I got knocked down, and I was skinny, but I was at the gym, and I was working at all that stuff. And my friend Craig says, hey, there's a really cool program at the Jewish Federation. It's all young people. You'll really like it. There's good speakers. And I did that. And lo and behold, good things are starting to happen. My career is blossoming. I meet the love of my life, Lisa. Unbelievable, right? We start dating. We start doing great things. I become a big brother mentor. I'm volunteering. We're raising funds. We're helping people. I just think things are coming together after just a horrendous nightmare, right? And we get married at Shutters at the Beach, overlooking the ocean. It's awesome. Things are good. I put cancer in the rear view. I got my act together. Humpty Dumpty version 1 is off and moving. And it was really great. Really, really great. But it wasn't magic. The blueprint for survivorship is you got to build one step at a time, take a step back, take a step forward, put a Band-Aid on it, and keep on going. And we have an adage in the cancer world, we call it KFG, keep effing going. What choice do you have?
Yeah.
I mean, you can get depressed, and that's okay to keep it inward a little, but you can't go dark. You can't get it down to a dark place where you're not functional, and and the way I did that was not being alone. I started making friends. I started, getting out there again. And really, I actually give it a tribute to my wife, because I started doing community service. And that's how you met people. But there's just such a good thing of raising money for people in need and becoming a big brother. It just helps make you well-rounded. And I'm really grateful that I did that, because it was amazing.
Well, a
And
lot
so,
of that giving back activity is physically demonstrating gratitude, right?
yes,
Right. And
yes.
gratitude, so we're talking mindset. Gratitude and forgiveness is so huge in the healing process, right? And in moving forward in your life. So you just basically said, okay, I'm done. Cancer's in the rearview mirror. I have this beautiful opportunity. I'm grabbing the opportunity. I got a wonderful woman that came into my life. I'm moving forward, and life is gorgeous. And you decide to have a family.
Yes. Okay. So I would tell you, I put it in the rear view, but just remember that I never forgot the horror show, the S show that was happening back then. I was appreciative. I was giving back. I spoke in front of 1,000 people for lymphoma and leukemia as their honored guests before they did team and training. So giving back helped that. But I never forgot who was there for me and who took care of my parents, were my caregivers, the doctors and infusion room nurses, and my twin sister saved my life. I got a second chance that people just sometimes don't get.
Right.
So very grateful, as you're alluding to. All right. All right. Remember that trip to the cryogenic center? Lisa and I are married. We moved up to Silicon Valley. I'm in the startup game. Um, and things are going well. I'm kind of, listen, you can't cure all evils. And I am a workaholic, and I was workaholic. She asked me how many times I've been home for dinner, and I probably said, I don't know. And she said 8. She says, you got to be home for dinner. And we called for the specimen, and we did in vitro fertilization, a procedure called ICSI, and they injected the good swimmers into Lisa's 4 eggs, and one came out Emily, our frozen miracle girl, our kidsicle, we tease her, and we had a healthy baby girl. Oh my goodness, miracle 2. It's just amazing. It was great. We're living in Silicon Valley. I IPO'd a few companies. Pace is fast out there, but I was starting to be home for dinner a lot. And we just felt so blessed and so grateful and so lucky. So it was great. And then rolling the story forward, we left Silicon Valley because my twin sister said, I'm moving to Michigan. Well, my wife's from Michigan, and I wanted Emily to grow up with cousins and family. So at 4 years old, we moved back to Michigan. Great place to raise a family, not as frenetic pace as there is in Silicon Valley. And it was easier for my mom and dad to come out quite a bit to see all the grandkids. And we moved back here in 2005. So I've been here now 18 years. We raised our family here, and everything was going well. I started my own platforms, my own startups, and things are great. And I'm getting involved in the community here. I'm still a big brother for my little brother, Ian, who actually was in law school at the time in California. And Lisa's back home, and my twin sister's a half hour away. And she's best friends with my wife, and the cousins all grew up from age 4 to 6 all the way up through college, which is amazing. So life is good, but like things happen, lightning struck again. I went to get my 50-year-old physical, time for a colonoscopy. That colonoscopy is in June 4th of 2016. I wake up and I'm in good shape. I'm an athlete. I work out. I play hoops. And the doctor says, I go, Doc, is everything okay? And he said, no. And I said, what are you talking about? What's going on? He goes, well, I found something high up in your cecum that connects the large and small intestine. I was like, oh my God, what? And Lisa's holding my hand, and he says, when I find something, it's bad news. Well, bad news turned into stage 3 colon cancer and an immediate colon resection called a hemicolectomy of 13 inches and margin and lymph nodes out of my colon. Your colon's very like elasticy. They took 13, they tied it back up. A month later, I get a chemo port in, and then we went to soccer national championships, and then I started chemotherapy, rock'em sock'em chemo again. Lightning struck again. Life came to a screeching halt twice. Right. Now, I wasn't a deer in the headlights. It was a digital environment. We got cell phones, digital. I could do research. I knew what I had, but it doesn't take the shock and awe away from, holy moly, this is back. And I got to go fight the good fight again. But this time I was a Marine on a mission. I'm different. I've got a daughter. I'm married. And my daughter was a freshman in high school, starting freshman year. I was like, wow, you start thinking about things. Am I going to see her graduate high school? All those questions start rolling in your head. And then in this world of Facebook and, there's no landlines, I was able to decide if I want to keep my story private or share it. And I'm a sharing type of guy. So I respect that, but I shared it wide and far, and people were following me on my journey. And I started chemo, and it just kicked the crap out of me. It was tough stuff. And there's lots of side effects. And unfortunately, I failed chemo and I relapsed. So once you do that, they scan you, and then bang, another 10 inches of colon removed. So you heal from that. And then I had a key decision to make, to do a clinical trial or to do some like standardized chemo. The chemotherapies haven't changed much in the colorectal cancer world. They've been around for a while, except for immunotherapy, but I didn't qualify for immunotherapy, which would have been great because I called that Dr. Rubin again and I brought him onto my team. And I said, he wanted me to check to see if my mutation burden was the correct, and it wasn't. 99% of all colorectal cancer are microsatellite stable. I wasn't microsatellite unstable, called MSI. So I wasn't eligible for Keytruda or Opdivo. Anyhow, I failed chemo. I failed the clinical trial. I'm back in Texas for this soccer national championships. We won. My daughter played on this great team, but I knew something was wrong. I couldn't sleep. I was in pain. I could feel tumors off my ribs and my tummy. And my wife tattled on me and called my doctor. And he called me. He's like, you go 5 minutes away, go to Baylor Hospital and go get checked out. I think your spleen needs to be removed. Like now. I go, I'll wait until after the game. And then two soccer moms, one was a former nurse, the other one, they drove me, and Emily went with another family for lunch. And I walked into Baylor, and there's no emergency or trauma there. So it was, they took me, I was the only patient. So I did, the ultrasounds and a CAT scan and all the blood work. And I leave and I start calling later in the afternoon. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. That next morning, I finally get a hold of the emergency room doctor, or the doctor that saw me. And I was like, what's going on? You got to tell me my results. And he's like, I can't. I go, no, you have to. It's my information. He goes, call your oncologist. So I call my oncologist, and he says, you got to come home now. You metastasized. I was like, what happened? And he said, it spread to your liver, your stomach lining called the peritoneum and omentum, and your bowel. And we got to get you back. And I was like, this is really bad news. I tried to keep it from Emily. She said she knew. And I said, no. I said, there's nothing that this is a Friday. I go, there's nothing that can be done over the weekend. I'll be back Sunday night. I don't want to wreck this. And I want to see this moment, because you got to make memories, because I didn't know, that the clock was ticking a lot faster for me. So I get back to Michigan on Sunday, and we won. It was amazing. It was the best experience for her and for me. And I go down to get out of my clinical trial, and they confirmed that I had stage 4 metastatic colon cancer. And then I'm talking to a very experienced colon doctor there. And I was like, I just Googled, maybe I shouldn't have. It says I have 4% chance of living like 6 to 12 months. He's like, yeah, maybe a little longer. I said, well, I'm 53 years old. I'm in really good shape. I've been playing even basketball through some chemo, and when I'm surgeries, and I'm active. I was like, what are my, chances? I said, can I make it? He said a word that sticks with me today: rarely. And he walked out of the room, and I allowed myself to go dark. I did. I sat in that room by myself with my thoughts, and I went dark. And then I got mad. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to see, I'm going to die. This is happening to me again. And, but yeah, I had to compose myself. So I went home. The next day I go to my oncologist, and I'm really close with my oncologist and the nurse, doctor's assistant, and practitioner. To my left is my wife. To my right is my twin sister. And on FaceTime is my mom. I got the 3 most important women, except for Emily, with me. And my doctor and the physician's assistant, Michelle, Dr. Zeckman and Michelle Wanch, they came in, and they just were shaking their head and said, I'm sorry. And I looked to my left, my wife's bawling. I looked to my right, my sister's bawling. And the doctor and the nurse practitioner, they're bawling. And my mom's bawling. And they go, well, everyone compose themselves for a second. I go, what are we supposed to do here? says, we're going to just attack it with powerful chemo. We're going to blast you again. We got to go for the Hail Mary. So for all the goodness, I got to get blasted with chemo, more chemo. So I did it for 4 cycles every 2 weeks. I tested, and we got a little bit of a miracle because I had what's called regression or shrinkage. I make fun of like the George Costanza from Seinfeld. I got shrinkage, and it ended up being that I get 4 more cycles of chemo. Well, at that time, I joined an online group called Colon Town, and I actually found it from a guy in the Netherlands. This is where the internet's amazing. And he said, come here, and you can come talk to 100 people that have had this crazy surgery called cytoreduction HIPAC, where they cut you open from chest plate to pubic bone, and they take out all the cancer with microscopic glasses, and then they pour hot chemo inside you. They spin you around like a rotisserie chicken. Well, I interviewed doctors from around the world. I got accepted by every single doctor, and I decided to stay at home here in Michigan, 5 miles from my house. The surgeon there had only done 41 of them, but you needed to be a great cutter. And he had done thousands of surgeries before, taking out gallbladders and shaving livers and all the stuff that I needed done. So on March 13th, I went in for this surgery, and it was 13 and a half hours. You wake up in the ICU, and you press the morphine drip, and you wait for your digestive system to wake up. That means your liver, your bowel, your everything. And they get you up walking. But I was in the hospital for 10 days, luckily, but they had to insert stents in my kidneys because they weren't waking up. Another procedure. And I was a ghost. I was back to 135 pounds and bald, and I was just, it knocked me to the moon there. That was a tough one. And you got to get up out of bed every day. But sometimes you had steroid rage, and sometimes you didn't want to get out of bed every day. But you know what? My little puppy, Cody, wanted to take a walk. So you go out to the mailbox, and he wanted to go a little further, right? And I had my friends pushing me hard. My basketball buddies, come on out, just shoot around. Oh, we need a guy to play, even though I was terrible. And I had to build it back, Humpty Dumpty version 2.0 all over again. But miracle number 3 was this crazy hot chemo surgery that extends lives. Only around 67% still relapse. And I'm in the good side right now. I'm 3.5 years, what's called no evidence of disease at this time. And I'm putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. And we'll stop there for a second, then we'll tell you what was next.
Okay. So talking about, the thing about the miracles, Howard, because there are many more miracles than 3 in all of this, are the opportunities that are presenting themselves just when you need them.
Yes.
Right. And this has a lot to do, honestly, with mindset, intention, curiosity, persistence, right? It's like you had a purpose, right? You had a purpose. First, when you were 23, your purpose was, I'm only 23, I am going to live, right? But the second time, your purpose was, I'm going to see my daughter graduate. I'm going to be here for my daughter. I am not checking out right now, right? And so, well, what else is out there? And what else is out there? And you didn't take no for an answer.
Sure. I didn't share the gory details on Facebook, but my wife and caregiver extraordinaire, Lisa, took good care of me, tried to keep Emily as much, as normalized. I was still going to many of her soccer games and tournaments. I sometimes had to have other dads drive because I was just coming off of chemo. But I had to build it up again. And I learned how to accept help. I was always, wanted to be the caregiver and take care of things. And, I'm an outgoing Silicon Valley technology guy. And I actually had to take help, and I took help. People were bringing meals and shakes, and the school sent supplies. And my high school friends and college buddies ran a GoFundMe to take the medical bills off the table for me. And I learned to take help, even if it was just a prayer or a cheer or a joke. People sent me about 100 books. I read about 3 of them because I had chemo brain, but still, it was so appreciative. People, I felt it. I had this army built around me, lifting me up. And that's important. That's why you can't go at it alone. And I realized that the lesson I learned was it's not what you get, it's what you give. And I was even more focused on getting healthy so I could actually even do more than I was actually wanting to give back, and thank those infusion nurses and thank the medical technology community and thank my friends and family for really sticking by me. And that's a huge lesson. And I call that shining brightly. Okay, so we can all lift ourselves up. Some of that you got to take your own responsibility.
Right.
And, that work-life balance, the health, the diet, the physical, emotional, the relationships, the financial, and you got to take care of all that stuff. And it doesn't all happen in a day. And sometimes
No.
there's some steps back. Sometimes you got to go around, you got to go through, but you definitely have to be resilient. And that's where the book came out. I actually went from cancer to COVID, and I dictated a book. So we can talk about that next if you'd like.
Well, I absolutely would want to talk about that next. So resilience, and one of the things I wanted to touch on just briefly is that you did go to a dark place. And what's really interesting is when I work with clients who are in a dark place, you have permission to have a pity party for 30 seconds. You can have a pity party. Okay, the pity party is over. Right now, I don't want you to suppress that, the anger, the shame, the rage that you're feeling because your plans are now all disrupted. But I want you to use that, alchemize that energy to, okay, so what's next? And take that energy and push it out and push it forward. And I think that's what you did. You allowed yourself to sit in that room, right, and fall apart and go to a dark place. But then before you walked out, like, okay, now what's next? Right. So it's okay to, take that hit. I mean, you got hit, goodness sakes. Do take it. And do you feel sorry for yourself for a moment, right? For a moment, because your plans are all disrupted. Your life is over the way that you thought it was going to be. And you have a choice of going down a spiral or saying, okay, now what? What's next? And you went out and said, okay, let's research. Let's see what's out there.
I just want to make sure that everyone knows that this doesn't happen. There's just not a flashbang and it happens. It takes time. It
Right.
takes work. A couple steps back, a couple steps forward. It's all about progress and consistency. But I my mental toughness, it's like a muscle. I was mentally strong in there. Not always, not 100% of the time. And physically, I was pushing the envelope to get back on the basketball court and
Yeah.
and bike and hike and do all that sort of stuff. And that helps. And I was taking care of myself and my diet, but I still had tons of challenges, side effects like neuropathy, side effects like, constant diarrhea, side effects like chemo brain, which I still face today. It's like PTSD, but everyone's got their own stuff to deal with. And I still have mine to deal with. And I still try to march forward every day with those things that I know I have to deal with.
Right. Right. And it's just continuing to move forward. So you created a business around this, you wrote a book around this. We have lots of links that we're going to be sharing with folks at in the notes. So please do take a look at the notes. So tell us about the book and tell us about, Shining Brightly and how that has evolved.
So it's really, I am the least likely published author you'd ever want to meet because I'm not a writer. And so how do you do that? So a friend of mine, David Crum, I met for bagels and coffee, and he was actually kind of saying goodbye. I was in treatment and he didn't know and I didn't know. And he's like, you want to write a legacy thing, for Emily and for Lisa? And I was like, I never even thought about that. Not on my bucket list. No. He goes, why not? He goes, because I'm not a writer. Grammar and punctuation are optional. I'm a business guy. I bullet point everything. And because I go to the bathroom a lot, I came out of the bathroom one time and he, on a napkin, he wrote 10 chapters titles because he was listening to some of my stories. And he says, go ask Lisa. I go, oh my God, really? So I did. I came home. I said, David wants me to write a book. She started laughing. She goes, you? How's that going to happen? So I slept on it and I called him back the next day and I said, David, I'll write a book. I have one condition. He goes, only one? Most authors have like 20. I go, nope, I just have one, very simply. If you'll allow me to record on Zoom the most influential, important people in my life, and we'll walk back my life, I'll write a book with you. big pause. He's like, we've never done that. I got to call you back. So he talked to other folks in the publishing house and he said, Howard, we're going to do it. And he said it's going to take a year, but we got to be diligent. Sometimes, we're going to meet on every Wednesday for 2 hours. And sometimes we might need to meet twice a week, depending on schedule. I said, okay, I'm committed to it. It's COVID. This started in October of 19 and rolled into like March of 20 when COVID started. My daughter moved home from Michigan to live with us. And I'm not allowed to go in anyway. So we started recording. Those recordings are me kind of conducting and emceeing groups of people sometimes, or individuals, and we're talking amongst each other. And those transcripts from Zoom became drafts, which became chapters, which became a manuscript over a lot of hard work. Mm-hmm. And just like I say, cancer is a team sport, basketball is a team sport. Writing a book in 900 steps before you press go on Amazon, it's a team sport. The editorial that it took between my wife, Lisa, and my publishing company, Front Edge Publishing, a lot of work. But 3 years and hard work later, got a beautiful book. It was a bestseller in 3 categories, and it's selling really well. I just did a podcast that it sold 1,250 in 90 days, which is really good for authors. And I've got to keep the amplification up. And I am a published author with endorsements, and it's now leading to paid speaking gigs, a lot in the healthcare, in the entrepreneurial and the leadership spaces. It's really cool. And then I'm going to start a coaching practice on survivorship. Right. And so it's leading to good things again. Again, good things are now happening. Confidence is coming back, earning an income again. Still doing a lot of community service in the interfaith space and in the cancer space. And so the book is great because it's my legacy. Now, here's the deal. It reads really quickly. Because it's my memoir, I'm not talking to you, the reader. I'm talking to people in the chapters on Zoom. And so it's very different, where it's conversational and people get a kick out of it because there's a lot of voices, not just my own. I give homework at the end of every chapter. There's lessons on, there's calls to action. That's the type of guy I am. I want you to consider a call to action. So on family traditions, there's one, think about your own family. Think of the foods, the smells, the arguments. think of the holiday stuff that you do with your family. And there's mentorship. I interviewed some of my old bosses and Ian, my little brother, talk about the Hollywood relationship with Lisa. I talk about a miracle child. Where Shining Brightly came from, it came from Babson College. I was a trustee and president of the Alumni Association, and I was introducing our first woman president, Carrie Healy. And I said, Carrie Healy, President Healy, please meet the Worldwide Alumni Association. We're shining brightly for you today. And bang, we put on these shining glasses. And that's actually where it came from. But it means so much more because the book ends with hope. Leading a resilient life with hope. Without hope, okay, you can share a hug, you can share love, but without hope, the world gets dark. And that's the fuel that propelled me forward. I never lost hope. And so I always say we can shine brightly a little bit every day for ourselves, for others in our communities. And yes, the world will be a better place. And I live that every day.
That's fantastic. And so, Howard, obviously the book is out on Amazon, probably in bookstores where people can go and pick up a copy. How else can they get in touch with you if they want to know more?
Yeah, it's not in bookstores.
Oh, no.
I don't think so.
I'm a liar.
No, you just didn't know. But getting it into the airport or getting it into the bookstores, much harder than I thought. It doesn't matter. Amazon sells 85% of the books, but Barnes & Noble and BookBub and other, you can get it. You can get the Kindle download. It's great. Or you can contact me at shiningbrightly.com. And one of the things that went away during the pandemic was kind of person-to-person book signings. I'll still have one when I go and speak, but I actually have these things called book plates. And anyone that orders on Amazon or contacts me directly for a direct order, I will sign a personalized copy. It's a sticker, and I mail these to you.
Oh, that's
and then
adorable.
You can have a signed book, and people want a signed book. And so please contact me for that. The other thing is that there are downloads. You can download what's called a Sadaka box or a piggy bank, and kids can color it. There's 3 discussion guides, and they're important. One on survivorship, one on mentorship, and one on interfaith why be friends or get to know the other folks that don't look like me? And they're downloads to discussions for your book clubs and things like that. And you can't tell Gail I'm having a blast, right?
Right. And as you should, you definitely have paid for the opportunity to have a blast. And, for me, that when people say, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? I first want to say, lighten up, because it's not that big. Your purpose is to have a blast. Your purpose is to play. Your purpose is to enjoy this experiential moment that you've chosen to be here for. So, you're doing exactly, you are demonstrating this is the purpose. Yes, I went through some shit. And, we can talk about the law of polarity, right? If you didn't go through that, you wouldn't be doing this, right? Right. And so you are living life every moment because you've almost lost it twice.
That's right.
Right.
So it's work hard, play hard, but take room to sleep. Sleeping is healing. Have that balance. And I'm learning. I'm not perfect. I fall down and scrape my knee all the time, but I'm learning and carrying forth. And only God knows when your number is called. And unfortunately, in the stage 4 cancer world, it's way too often, and younger people more than ever. It's terrible. We need to carry on in their memory and carry forth. And here's the great thing. My daughter graduated University of Michigan 3 weeks ago. She is working as a reporter, and I now will put it out there. Even though I have a chemo port, even though I'm being still checked for scans and blood tests, I plan to walk her down the aisle.
Yes.
Someday at the
You
right
will.
time.
You
And I'm
will.
putting out the bigger goal. Now I'm ready. I'm putting out the bigger goal. And I'm finding my happy place. I played hoops 2 hours today and just stress-free. Go find your happy place, whatever that you define that as, and go there a lot.
Absolutely. And I love the stress-free, because and we could have a whole podcast on that. We just might have a whole podcast
I
on
think
that.
you'll come back on my podcast, and I think we'll do that.
Oh yeah, and we'll talk about stress-free.
Yeah, let's do
Absolutely,
that.
absolutely.
People
Yeah,
need to hear that a
we'll
lot.
talk about this, because that is really, I live a stress-free life. And yes, do stressors come in? Yes, but I have a process where bim, 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 and it's gone. They're not, no permission to stay and anchor down. But anyway, thank you so much, Howard, for your time, for your brilliance, for your brightness. Yes, shining brightly, guys. Go get the book and do get in touch with him. This is Gail Craft from the Empowering Process podcast. If this podcast inspired you, let us know. If you have a question, let us know. If you know someone, and I bet you do, who could actually benefit from this, share this out for them. And as always, do subscribe so that you know about every episode that comes up. Thank you, everybody. And thank you so much, Howard. Bye-bye.
Thank you. It's letting you shine.
He's got his glasses on.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.